Assalamu alaikum rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Hope you're doing well. We are continuing our reading of Friedrich Nietzsche's Thus Spoke Zarathustra book. This section is on apostates. Let's begin. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alas, all lies withered, and grey that but recently stood green, and colourful on this meadow, and how much honey of hope I carried from here to my beehives. These young hearts have all become old already, and not even old, only weary, ordinary, and comfortable. So weary, so no energy. Ordinary, so not unique. And comfortable, complacent. They put it, we have become pious again. So conflating piousness with boring. Only recently I saw them run out in the morning on bold feet, but the feet of their thirst for knowledge have grown weary, and now they even slander the courage they had in the morning. Verily, many among them once lifted their legs like dancers, cheered by the laughter in my wisdom. Then they thought better of it. Just now I saw one groveling, crawling back to the cross. So that's obviously a jab at the Christians, right? So mentioning the cross, and then saying we become pious again, so mentioning the pious. Around light and freedom they once fluttered like mosquitoes and young poets, a little older, a little colder, and already they are musty mystifiers and hearth squatters. So this musty mystifiers, a desk with lots of dust, books gathering dust, but they're doing these, one could say, mystery studies, occultic studies. They're just overcome with wonder and kind of becoming an isolated hermit, and a room full of smoke from incense or cannabis, right? So when you're in a musty area, it's not a lot of fresh airflow. It's kind of stuffy. Hearth squatters. You can picture people just sitting around the fire, not wanting to move away from the heat. Just always gathering there, sort of a spot where people come together. So on the beach you create a bonfire, people gather. In the cave, people go and have a fireplace, or in someone else's home there's like a fireplace and you go there and they just sit around lounging about, talking idly, not really leaving that spot or going out and seeking knowledge, but just sitting there. Did their hearts perhaps grow faint because solitude swallowed me like a whale? Solitude makes me think of Jonah. Eunice, right? Solitude swallowed me like a whale. Solitude, the darkness, alone. Did their ears perhaps listen longingly, long in vain, for me and my trumpet and herald's calls? Alas, there are always only a few whose hearts long retain their courageous bearing and overbearing prankishness, and whose spirits also remain patient. So he says here, there's only a few people whose hearts keep being courageous and endure that overbearing prankishness of life, and whose spirits are patient with all that. The rest, however, are cowards. The rest, those are always by far the most and commonplace, the superfluous, the all too many. All these are cowards. The all too many, so there's lots of copycats. Sort of the generic, that's what I'm thinking of when he says that. So the all too many. You're not really unique anymore. You're not that diamond in the rough. You're not the needle in the haystack. Whoever is of my kind will also encounter the experiences of my kind. Ooh, That's a bar right there. If you're of my kind, you'll experience the experiences of my kind. So his first companions will have to be corpses and jesters. Corpses and jesters. Corpses. So, a corpse, nothing really you can do to animate it. Yet the jester is someone who animates, so. Reminds me of like, sort of unexpectedness of the jester, yet the finitude and the finality of the corpse. So his first companions will be corpses and jesters. His second companions, however, will call themselves his believers. A living swarm. Ooh, a living swarm. Much love, much folly, much beardless veneration. Beardless veneration, so we haven't really gained those years of wisdom. If you think about how a man could be clean shaven, right? Then he gets kind of stuck out in the wilderness and he's unable to shave, and he's weathered many storms and he's let his beard grow out and he looks like he's come out of a foggy bog and he's got some stories to tell. You know, the shiny shaved suit man from the finance district versus the guy who's been out on the seas, who's salty with a crusty beard. You know, there's something to that. To these believers, whoever is of my kind among men should not tie his heart. Those who know the changeful, cowardly nature of mankind should not believe in these springtimes and colorful meadows. So, whoever is of my kind, don't tie your heart to mankind, basically because humans, they change, and they are inherently cowards. So just as spring blooms and the meadows in the fall looking pretty, that will fade. It's cyclical. Were their ability different, their will would be different too. Those who are half and half spoil all that is whole. Ooh. Those who are half and half spoil all that is whole. So, the fence sitters, right? They're lukewarm, half in, half out. They got one leg here and the other one's over there. You know? They're in the middle of the doorway, 1 foot in, 1 foot out. But when you're fully committed, you see it's different. That leaves wilt. What is there to wail about? Let them fly and fall, O Zarathustra, and do not wail. It is better to blow among them with rustling winds. Blow among these leaves, O Zarathustra, that everything wilted may run away from you even faster. Number 2. We have become pious again, so these apostates confess. So, see here, he's having fun playing with the word apostates. So, they've decided to become the traditional religious crowd and leave sort of his mode and code, right? They've apostatized from Zarathustra back into the traditional dogma. Those I look in the eye and then I say it to their faces and to their blushing cheeks. You are such and such as pray again. But it is a disgrace to pray, not for everybody, but for you and me and whoever else has a conscience in his head too. For you it is a disgrace to pray. I disagree. But again, you know, he's being naughty here. You know it well, you cowardly devil within you who would like to fold his hands and rest his hands in his lap and be more comfortable. This cowardly devil urges you there is a God. With this, however, you belong to the light-shunning kind who cannot rest where there is light. Now you must daily bury your head deeper in night and haze. And verily you choose the hour well, for just now the nocturnal birds are flying again. The hour has come for all light-shunning folk, the hour of evening and rest when they do not rest. I hear and smell it, their hour for chase and procession has come. Not indeed for a wild chase, but for a tame, lame, snooping, pussyfooting, prayer-muttering chase for a chase after soulful sneaks. All the heart's mousetraps, the heart's mousetraps have now been set again, and wherever I lift a curtain, a little night moth rushes out. Did it perhaps squat there together with another little night moth? For everywhere I smell little hidden communities, and wherever there are closets, there are new cantors praying inside in the fog of the cantors. They sit together long evenings and say, "Let us become as little children again and say, Dear God." Ah, the little children. We are the children of God. We are the slaves of law. Christians call themselves children. Grown-ass man calling himself the child of God. It's like, you're a grown-ass man. You're going to war. Imagining a crusader who's literally chopping heads off, calling himself a child of God, is like, you're literally covered in blood. And you're out there shanking people. You're calling yourself a child. Changing the word of what a child actually means. A child is innocent and pure. Spiritually naive. To call yourself a child of God is like, what? I never agreed with that. Their mouths and stomachs upset by pious confectioners. Or they spend long evenings watching a cunning, ambushing, cross-marked spider which preaches cleverness to other spiders and teaches thus, under crosses one can spin well. Ooh. So under crosses one can spin well. So I'm thinking of the function of a spider's web is to catch something they can eat. This makes me think of financial scammers. So you got a preacher, there's been tons I've seen in the past. Maybe I'll start archiving them. Where they're like, donate to me because Jesus loves you. And then they have like a mega church, it's got private yacht like Joel Osteen, TD Jakes. Like TD Jakes was partying with P. Diddy. And so you have a lot of pastors who are like, give me money, Jesus loves this. There was a viral old clip where like this white man, probably 70 years old, was a pastor, and they asked him, why do you need a private jet? And he was saying how like he has to have a private jet, and his eyes got like all scary when he mentioned it. If I ever come across it again, I'll screenshot it if I remember, so that you can go watch it and see that. But when a lot of people complain about religion, they often think of the financial scammers who use religion in order to get rich. So you're able to spin lies and manipulation and then catch people. Now, obviously it's our job to make sure that kind of stuff doesn't happen within our faith in Islam. But there's people who will do that for Gaza and Palestine. Now, if you look at what the foreign policy agents are saying, trucks are not getting in. Right? They have a total embargo. The amount of money that has been raised for Palestine, you would think that they could build everything back 3 times over. Yet there's still people starving and living in tents, so where's this money going? It's being hoarded? And why are people not being shown where the money is going? I will say that Bro Haji has done a little bit of work on exposing some charities. I don't know if he considers himself a journalist or if his citations are correct, but he has been vocal about wondering how are these trucks getting in, and how much actually goes to where it's supposed to. So when I hear under crosses one can spin well, so if you put up a cross and you are like, oh, we're religious so you can trust us with your money, it's like a trap, a financial blood sucking, getting wrapped up in it. So Much could symbolically be extracted from this sentence. Or they spend the day sitting at swamps with fishing rods, thinking themselves profound. But whoever fishes where there are no fish, I would not even call superficial. This is a double-fold meaning, because there are catfish, pikes, different kinds of fish in swamps, but you're most likely gonna get an alligator if you're not careful. But there's lots of swamp fish, and there's frogs too. But yeah, if you're fishing when there ain't no fish, then you're just making a show. But a fisherman's job is to find where the fish are, so if you can't do that, then you're not really doing your job. Or they learn to play the harp with pious pleasure, from a composer of songs who would like to harp himself right into the hearts of young females. The power of the musician. Because when some women they see a guy play a guitar, they get immediately aroused. My grandpa, my biological grandpa, not my grandma's husband who raised me, who I call my grandpa, but my biological grandpa, who I never met, he was a drummer, and then my dad is a drummer. So 2 generations of drummers. So they got a lot of women. A lot of what they call groupies. So when he mentions, because the harp it's a very unique type of instrument. It's kind of pretty sounding, but how he plays with the word harp here, because when you harp on something, it's to like you're belating a point. Like you could tell someone, stop harping on me, man. Like you're bugging me. Like you're persistent. So you're using a delicate instrument called the harp to harp into someone's heart in a lustful way. This is a very clever sentence here. For he has grown weary of old females and their praise. See? So it's like an old lady can be like, you're awesome, you're the greatest composer, you're the best guy, blah, 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 blah. But they see a beautiful woman and they want to get in her pants. So he'd rather use his skills to get in the pants of a younger woman than to get the praise of an old woman. So pointing out, male psychology here. Or you could say the psychology of male musicians. Or they learn to shudder from scholarly, half-made man who waits in dark rooms for the spirits to come to him, so his spirit will flee completely. Okay, so a divinator. That sounds like a divinator here. Or someone who's really into intoxicants. So this makes me think of the Native American smoke lodges or the shamans. Right, you're in your teepee, you're in your lodge, and there's a peace pipe being smoked. They're taking some maybe ayahuasca or some other type of intoxicant, mushroom brew, and then they're waiting for the possession, and then they'll mumble some stuff. Not to be disrespectful, but to be accurate. Where he's talking in tongues and whatnot, right? Seance people, you get it. Well, they listen to an old traveling, cavilizing zany, who has learned the sadness of tones from sad winds. Now he whistles after the wind and preaches sadness in sad tones. That's an interesting one. I think I would fall to that one right there. Because he has learned the sadness of tones from sad winds. Now he whistles after the wind and preaches sadness in sad tones. That would be the kind that catches my ear. So we're seeing here, different types of manipulators and different types of emotional methodologies in order to get an audience. For me, if someone's preaching a sad song, I'm like, yeah, I want to hear it. I like that. Guilty as charged. That's one thing that caught me about the corridos, they would call it, in Mexican, which the cartels would use. And in Spanish, they would have songs about their suffering. And then they would have, a triumphant end at the end of the song. They were an avocado farmer, and then they got they rose up to higher ranks in the cartel. And then there'll be like a gunshot in the song, like and they'll go like oh, like they make a caw sound, like a rooster call in the songs. And it literally is the type of music that gets me super pumped up. That's why I can't listen to it. Obviously, because I'm Muslim and we don't listen to music. But there's a sadness to it and there's an elevation to it. Also, the cello, when he says sad tones, one reason why I like the cello is because it's sad. You know, the composers who, Ramin Djawadi, I can't pronounce his name right, but he did the music for Game of Thrones, and if you notice with House Stark, there's always like a deep, sad undertone, and that appeals to my psychology greatly. I didn't like Vivaldi's Spring, like the seasons, like or like of Beethoven. That wasn't me. But when you would get into the cello and it's like sad and has a deep tone of like death and tragedy and suffering, I'm like, that catches my ear sharp. And I'd rather hear that than hear someone be like, life is full of daisies and the butterflies are flying. Like, no, like, you sing about something sad, I'm like, not depressing, not like weird emo garbage. There's there is literally an art to that. So when it talks here that he learned the sadness of tones from sad winds, was able to replicate that, he learned that art. And so I really connect with this part quite well. Maybe you do as well. And some of them have even become night watchmen. Now they know how to blow horns, and to walk about at night, and to awaken old things that had long gone to sleep. I heard 5 sayings about old things such night at the garden wall. They came from such old, saddened, dried-up watchmen. For a father, he does not care enough about his children. Human fathers do this better. He is too old, he does not care about his children at all anymore. Thus the other night watchman replied, but does he have any children? Nobody can prove it, if he does not prove it himself. I have long wished he would for once prove it thoroughly. Prove as if he had ever proved anything. Proof is difficult for him. He considered it terribly important that one should have faith in him. Ooh. See what he did there? Faith versus proof. So, benefit of the doubt. Benefit of the doubt. How that, trust, how that can be manipulated, right? Can you prove to me, like, you're gonna do this financial thing that it works, what you're talking about? Have faith in me, man. I never steered you wrong before. Hey, pastor, can you show me where the money's going? Have faith in me and don't you give me a suspicious eye. How dare you? You see? So, you know. But others like, do you trust me? Like Aladdin. Wasn't that him when he did that with Jasmine? Do you trust me? Who else said that? I think Jack and the Titanic as well. So you see this played out, like the leap of faith. There's tons of stuff where you have to trust in the decree of Allah, and then having faith in your fellow companions, giving people the benefit of the doubt, but not being naive. But sometimes you need to see the proof in the pudding before investing. You see the dynamics here that he's given us? It's very good writing. Sure, faith makes him blessed. Faith in him. That is the way of old people. We are no different ourselves. Thus, the 2 old night watchmen and Scarelight spoke to each other, and then tooted sadly on their horns. So, it happened last night at the garden wall. In me, however, my heart twisted with laughter and wanted to break, and did not know whither, and sank into my diaphragm. Verily, this will yet be my death, that I shall suffocate with laughter when I see asses drunk and hear night watchmen thus doubting God. Is not the time long past for such doubts too? Who may still awaken such old, sleeping, light-shunning things? For the old gods, after all things, came to an end long ago. And verily they had a good day, godlike end. They did not end in a twilight, though this lie is told. Instead, one day they laughed themselves to death. That happened when the most godless word issued from one of the gods themselves. The word, there is one God. Thou shalt have no other God before me. Talking about Jehovah Yahweh. Also Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We're not supposed to commit shirk. And old grim beard of a god, a jealous one, thus forgot himself. And then all the gods laughed and rocked on their chairs and cried, Is not just this God like that there are gods but no God? He that has ears to hear, let him hear. Well, a jealous one? So he's mentioning when you shall put, for I am a jealous God, you should put no other gods before me. Talking about the Christian aspect, but we don't use the word jealous in Islam to describe Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's a right that Allah has over us, that we worship the one who made us. And shirk invokes Allah's wrath, but we don't use the word jealous, but the word jealous is a Christian phraseology. Thus Zarathustra discoursed in the town which he loved, and which is also called the Motley Cow. For from here he had only 2 more days to go to reach his cave and his animals again. But his soul jubilated continually because of the nearness of his return home. Okay, now we're in the return home. So now that apostate one really seems like a battle between the old orders of the pagans, of Zarathustra's outlook, of the one who's freely a wanderer, who does as he wills, and then contrasting that with Christianity. So he seems here to be talking about the way in which people preach, because there's also the fire and brimstone preachers. There's preachers who kind of are fanciful. So it appears that he's criticizing, when I read this, that they've betrayed human nature, that they've kind of gone against how a human should seek knowledge and go about reprimanding themselves, and how their cognitive ability should be concerning trust and such. So there's an interesting point he makes, although I don't agree with obviously everything, but it's still a section that makes us think. So on to the return home. Bismillah. O solitude, O my home, solitude. Too long have I lived wildly in wild, strange places, not to return home to you in tears. Now you may threaten me with your finger as mothers threaten. Now you may smile at me as mothers smile. Now you may say to me, And who was it that, like a storm, once stormed away from me? Who shouted in parting, Too long I have sat with the solitude. I have forgotten how to be silent. That I suppose you have learned again now? O Zarathustra, I know everything. Also that you were more forsaken among the many, being one, than ever with me. To be forsaken is one thing, to be lonely another. So forsaken versus lonely. That you may have learned now, and that among men you will always seem wild and strange even when they love you, for above all things they want consideration. So when you're wild and strange, sometimes you don't consider how you come across to people, and you're blunt a little bit, maybe sometimes too concise, and don't know how to do the delicate dance of small talk. Maybe you get you open up too fast, or you reveal too much too quickly to people you just met. And maybe you're an open book too much and you don't consider others, or maybe you bring subjects up that others don't want because you are different and eccentric, and others don't find that to be very polite conversation. So you're not considering the context, the room you're in, or the people you're around. Here, however, you are in your own home and house. Here you can talk freely about everything and pour out all the reasons. Nothing here is ashamed of obscure, obdurate feelings. Here all things come caringly to your discourse and flatter you, for they want to ride on your back. On every parable you ride to every truth. Here you may talk fairly and frankly to all things. Exactly, so I was on the right path. See? Talk fairly. To be fair, sometimes when you're having a conversation, I do this too. Like, if I can see both sides, I'll be like, well, to be fair, X, Y, and Z. Well, to be honest with you, which is to be frank, sometimes you can't do that. You can't. Because you know the temperament. Like if you're talking to your boss, and they bring something up, and you're like, or you're in a group of liberals, and you want to be like, there's only 2 genders. They can't, you know. Because they'll be like, how dare you? Nah, there's 75. You'll be like, I gotta get out of here. Rather go home. And barely it rings in their ears like praise when somebody talks straight to all things. Talk straight. Give it to me straight. Don't sugarcoat it. Don't beat around the bush. To be forsaken, however, is another matter. For do you still remember, Zarathustra, when your bird cried high above you, when you stood in the forest, undecided where to turn, ignorant, near a corpse, when you said, may my animals lead me, I found it more dangerous to be among men than among animals. Ooh, so pack animals. Let's think of pack animals. Docile herds. When you're among animals, usually around docile animals. So, livestock. But if you're around a pack of bears, they're animals, you ain't gonna feel safe around it. You know, unless you're choosing when a feminist asks, do you choose the man or do you choose the bear in the woods? You know, that's the paradoxical question. But may my animals lead me? That has a twofold thing. Your animalistic based nature, your animal primal desires, your animal bestial compulsions, your baser nature. Think of the centaur. What is kind of the centaur represents a man who's half human, half beast. Right? And he's led by his legs, by his bestial nature, whereas the upper part is him in his more divine form, more celestial makeup, if you're looking at symbolically. Now, is it safer to follow the herd of the sheep of the cattle than it is to be around some humans? It depends on the kind of group you're in, right? So we can see this from a poetic point quite clearly. Then you were forsaken, and do you still remember, Zarathustra, when you sat on your island, a well of wine among empty pails, spending and expending, bestowing and flowing among the thirsty? So, flowing among the thirsty for knowledge, those who hunger to hear something, who are enthusiastic, until finally you sat thirsty among drunks and complained by night. So, when they're totally filled up, whereas you are left wanting, there wasn't a fair exchange. You dropped knowledge and then didn't get reciprocated, so there's like a negative balance due. Is it not more blessed to receive than give, and to still more blessed than to receive? Then you were forsaken. And do you still remember, Zarathustra, when your stillest hour came, and drove you away from yourself, speaking in an evil whisper, speak and break, when it made you repent all your waiting in silence, and discouraged your humble courage, then you were forsaken. O solitude, O my home, solitude, how happily and tenderly your voice speaks to me. We do not question each other. We do not complain to each other. We often walk together through open doors. For where you are, things are open and bright. And the hours, too, walk on lighter feet here. The hours, too, walk on lighter feet here. So time passes by when you're having fun. When you don't like who you're around, you're clock watching, time's dragging on, and you're just like, this is not fun for me. Like when you're waiting, just think of that feeling when you're waiting in a doctor's office and you're like, hello. But then suddenly you'll be talking to someone and then you get these conversations going and then you're like, dang, it's already been an hour, that just flew by. You right? So the way time moves, for in darkness time weighs more heavily on us than in the light. Hear the words and word shrines of all being open up before me. Here all being wishes to become word. All becoming wishes to learn from me how to speak. Down there, however, all speech is in vain. Their forgetting and passing by are the best wisdom that I have learned now. He who would grasp everything, human would have to grapple with everything. But for that my hands are too clean. I do not even want to inhale their breath. It's funny. Alas, that I live so long among their noses and their vile breath. I feel like a Nietzschean insults. I don't even want to inhale your breath. Like, well, that's rude. Not even if I use Listerine. Oh, happy silence around me. Oh, clean smells around me. Oh, how this silence draws deep breaths of clean air. Oh, how it listens, this happy silence. Oh, how it listens to these happy silence. But down there, everyone talks and no one listens. You could ring in your wisdom with bells. The shopkeepers in the marketplace would outjingle it with pennies. Everyone among them talks, no one knows how to understand anymore. That's is interesting. Lots of people doing podcasts, but they don't have any real knowledge. They don't understand really much, do they? A lot of it is like a lot of educated women who understand things and they teach, they don't get a lot of views. But the Hoktua girl who literally talked about spitting on a male organ during oral intimacy and went viral on TikTok, she has a podcast now. She was put on so many different shows, went super viral, and it's like she's talking and understands nothing and is an airhead degenerate, but gets massive amounts of views. So we can connect a lot with what he's saying here, because think about what he said right here. You could ring in your wisdom with bells. The shopkeepers in the marketplace would outjingle it with pennies. So the pennies, they would go louder. And people wouldn't be able to hear your bells of wisdom to come, But they would just be distracted with those who don't have even an ounce of something useful to say. Not saying that shopkeepers can't be smart, but that is like the shopping market. Think about it. So come over here and buy and consume. Don't seek to understand. So if you think about how people like to do more shopping than reading, they like to browse, window shop more than sitting down and reading a book. So you can see the example of that quite clearly. Everything falls into the water. Nothing falls into deep wells any longer. So the shallowness, everyone among them talks. Nothing turns out well anymore and is finished. Everyone cackles, but who still wants to sit quietly in the nest and hatch eggs? Everyone among them talks. Everything is talked to pieces. Everyone among them talks, so even people who shouldn't talk, talk. And it's talked to pieces is just like beating that dead horse. And what even yesterday was still too hard for time itself and its tooth, today hangs spoiled by scraping and gnawing, out of the mouths of the men of today. Everyone among them talks, everything is betrayed, and what was once called the secret and the secrecy of deep souls today belongs to the street trumpeters and other butterflies. Oh, everything human is strange, a noise on dark streets, but now it lies behind me again. My greatest danger lies behind me. Ooh, but now it lies behind me again. My greatest danger lies behind me. My past is behind me. You know, it's all behind you now. Keep going. Don't ever look back. But the way this is phrased is like, my greatest danger is behind you. So it's kind of like this creeping, trying to get you. And you're like, look behind you. Keep your head on a swivel. More of a cautious tone here. Consideration and pity have ever been my greatest dangers. And everything human wants consideration and pity, with concealed truths. With a fool's hand, and a fond, foolish heart, and a wealth of the little lies of pity. Thus, I always lived among men, disguised I sat among them, ready to mistake myself, that I might endure them, and willingly urging myself, you fool, you do not know men. One forgets about men when one lives among men. There is too much foreground in all men. What good are far-sighted, far-seeking eyes there? And whenever they mistook me, I, fool that I am, showed them more consideration than myself, being used to the hardness against myself. And often I even took revenge on myself for being too considerate. Too considerate. Consider their failings. If you're telling a truth and you're like, hey man, what's more important, telling the truth or considering that person's feelings? That's a question, right? Covered with the bites of poisonous flies, and hollowed out like a stone by many drops of malice. Thus I sat among them, and still reminded myself, everything small is innocent of its smallness. Okay, everything small is innocent of their smallness. I remember my grandma once said, a Chihuahua thinks it's a big dog. And you're like, what? But she would say, like, a small dog doesn't know it's small sometimes. Like a Chihuahua will get aggressive with a big dog. And if you actually start paying attention to this, you'll see some big docile dogs, and there'll be a little Chihuahua like biting, and you're like, all it takes is that big dog to get frustrated and chomp, you're done. But the big giant docile gentle giant dog, he's tolerating this little yappy nippy little dog, and it's innocently, you could argue, doesn't really realize how teeny tiny it is. I think that's pretty funny. Like, I'll see some hawks, they're bigger than the crows, but the crows will chase them around. And if you think about, like, these crows are pretty daring, but they will chase bigger birds than themselves. Especially those who call themselves the good. I found to be the most poisonous flies. So, those who call themselves good, they bite in all innocence. They lie in all innocence. How could they possibly be just to me? Pity teaches all who live among the good to lie. Pity surrounds all free souls with musty air. For the stupidity of the good is unfathomable. To conceal myself and my wealth that I learned down there, for I have found everyone poor in spirit. The lie of my pity was this, that I knew I could see and smell everyone what was spirit enough for him, and what was too much spirit for him. They're stiff sages, so they're kind of like, how dare you, I have all the wisdom. You know? But if you're flexible and more warily, you won't be so stuffy. I called them sagacious, not stiff, thus I learned to swallow words. They're grave diggers, I called them researchers and testers, thus I learned to change words. The grave diggers div themselves sick, under old rubbish lie noxious odors. One should not stir up the morass. One should live on mountains. So the high up peaks kind of elevate yourself up and out. This reminds me of the hadith that talks about when the Dajjal comes, how being a shepherd with his sheep will be content and the mountains will be safe for him. With happy nostrils, I again breathe mountain freedom. At last my nose is delivered from the smell of everything human. The city, sour milk, the garbage truck. Tickled by the sharp air, as by sparkling wines, my soul sneezes and jubilates to itself. Gesundheit! That's Zarathustra. That's funny. The sneezing element, huh? We say Alhamdulillah because when you sneeze, you feel elevated. When you yawn, you feel more drowsy. I forgot the exact hadith, but you have to also cover your mouth when you yawn because the shaitan goes down your throat or something. I forgot. But it's an interesting thing. What do you think about this section? I quite liked it. It's a bit tart, a bit on the nose, but a Nietzschean insult. I don't even want to inhale your breath. It's very poetic. There is one God, thou shalt have no other God before me, so Nietzsche doesn't really value the nuances of Tawheed. If he was alive today, I would give him a talking to. Talk straight to all things. May my animals lead me. I found it more dangerous to be among men than among animals. O solitude, O my home, solitude. So this is interesting as well because it's like, oh, solitude is this comforting thing, and then his home is a place of refuge. It's a sanctuary. Place where you can be in your own energy. Right? Fantastic reading. I hope you have learned something. Maybe this made you think of something in your life, present or past. Please let us know in the comments section. Please like, comment, and subscribe. And if you'd like to read more about what I write and all the diverse topics and support my content, I'm not monetized on any platform, you can go to www.subscribestar.com/MilahanArchive. Hope to see you there.